There we go. Now we have.
Okay,
Cool. All right, I'll bring it back. Good.
so I am Bill Brutzman. This is about MQTT and GoLang. And Go is a Google computer programming language that is fairly new and it's fast. And today is St. Patrick's Day. So I mentioned presses, and at our factory we have presses like this that stamp. They're like 100-ton presses, and there's a flywheel in them, and that's something like what a flywheel looks like. And this little flywheel I have on this guy is just a motor. There's a company that I like quite a lot called Adafruit in New York City.
Yeah.
And that's where I got some of this stuff from, but I know I got the motor from them. They have some excellent tools on MQTT that are worth looking at.
Yeah.
And one I almost made a copy of, but I didn't want to bore people like crazy, is the MQT packets. When you start reading about MQTT, they say, oh, this is so simple. It's a really, well, it's a sophisticated, it's a lightweight packet, but when the data gets encapsulated into the data stream, there's all kinds of error checking codes and
Could you run that off of what's the LoRa?
I don't know, but
Okay.
the answer is you don't have to get complicated with it.
Yeah.
For the Arduino, we're simply importing a driver that takes care of all the high-tech boring stuff, and we don't really have to worry about it. And the same is true with the GoLang side. So here's this inductive proximity sensor. It's got 3 leads on it. It's got 12 volts and ground. And when the electromagnet is, I hold the screwdriver next to there, or a pulse comes out.
When the pulse comes through on the blue wire.
Uh,
Oh, no, that's great.
Good question. The wiring is not like red is positive and black is negative. It's a little bit different. I do have that.
Yeah, I think usually they do that.
I can show that to you. I have that, but for
Yeah.
now that doesn't matter.
It's just like the signal comes off the third wire. That's what you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
For industrial applications, that power is 12. Well, that voltage is 12 volts typically. A lot of industrial is 24 volts.
Right.
The new Arduinos and new chips, even Raspberry Pi, this is true for. In the old days, it was 5 volts for TTL transistor logic. Now I think everything is CMOS, and it's 3.3 volts.
Yeah.
The threshold for a 1 is really 2 volts, and a 0 is 0 volts. So I'm feeding this thing with 12 volts. This is kind of a prototype. What I really want to do is have one power supply going to it. And on this rig that I have here, I have a DIN rail and I have some connectoids, and I'm just using a voltage divider to get it from 12 volts down to 2 volts.
Okay.
If I hit it with more than 3 volts, maybe, or more than 5 volts, I can fry the whole device, which we don't want to do. So that's just a heads up. There are some cheaper Arduinos out there, or Arduino is open source, but for the purpose of this demo and all the complexity of a live demo, I wanted to get the name brand thing.
Still some problems, availability issues too, right?
I had no problem getting this from Amazon.
Yeah.
But anyhow, what we're trying to do with this data is we're trying to send the data to a database so we can use it. So the system block diagram, oops. The system block diagram so far is that I have my press controller and my flywheel. I have my inductive proximity sensor connected with a voltage divider to the Arduino. And that is a Wi-Fi device, which we can see right on the Arduino. There are other Arduinos you can buy a hat for and add Wi-Fi to it. The ones I really want to get for production are just, well, Arduino has so-called nano units,
Yeah, the
that,
nanos.
which are nice and smaller. I guess they have less pins, but I really only need one pin for
Yeah.
this kind of sort of. But this mean old man here is representing a publisher. So in this world of MQTT, we have publishers, which are like these little devices, temperature sensors, and we have subscribers at the other end, PCs, and in the middle we got a broker. And so at our factory, we have a lot of machines. And we have a lot of publishers, which is different from the way the regular book world works. In the regular book world, you just have a handful of publishers, you know, Random House, Simon and Schuster, etc., and you have a lot of subscribers. In my case, and in many industrial IoT cases, you kind of have the opposite thing. You have many publishers, and in my case, just one subscriber. I'm just one guy listening to.
So you're like an on-demand publisher?
Well, good question. When the factory starts up Monday morning, they get in early, way too early for me, at 6 o'clock. They turn all the machines on, and this thing starts spinning and broadcasting MQTT messages. And then this middleman in the middle is listening to all those messages, and he's giving them from our red and blue diagram back before there, he's giving them to a computer, a so-called subscriber. So what we can do with MQTT, which is kind of cool, I'm not doing it for this example, but in general, the computer in the right-hand top could only be listening to the thermometer at the bottom left. And the other computer could be listening to other guys. And another cool thing we can do with this is do two-way communication. So a thing I want to do, even though I only have one broker that I really need and pretty much only one subscriber, but I could send, in my power strip here, I have a special power strip. I could send a digital signal over MQTT to my Wi-Fi device. And if the thing jams, I could shut it down. Like if the camera system jams and nothing's coming through and it's like 1,000 watts of power, I could turn it off from home.
Yeah.
Which is a nice thing. In my case, I don't need to turn it off from home, but it's a long walk for me from my desk all the way back into the factory, so I need to turn it off at home. But for our vanilla case, I have all these publishers sending out tons and tons of data. I have one middleman, my broker, who is really, we'll talk about him in a second. And I have another computer program of subscriber listening to the broker and just sending that stuff to the database. So there's my middleman, my MQTT broker, my subscriber in my database. And so that's why I have this publisher associated with the Arduino. Now, in terms of brokers and middlemen, there are a lot of them out there. There are some free, there are some that are pricey. Mosquito is Eclipse, and that's free. And I can run that on a Windows machine in my building. I don't have to send it out to the internet.
Yeah.
Some of the companies that you send out to the internet, it might cost $5,000 a year or something,
Yeah,
or a lot. But we only have 40 people at my company. We don't have to do that. If I'm a dumb manager, which I'm not, then I don't mind spending $5,000 for that. But on the other hand, if I'm an IT guy, which I am, I can just have a little Sometimes a cheap one is a command line Windows app that runs as a service in Windows, and it's crude, but it'll do what I need to do. The server's on all the time. When they come in the morning, it sends out the signal. It just passes the signal on through the database. So we can get.
I was just gonna, like, just to set like a basis. What's the savings for you for the counting? Is this like a material usage counter, or a waste counter, or?
It's not a waste counter. It's a piece counter.
A piece counter. Okay.
So just imagine a big roll of steel about 4 feet high and about this wide, rolled up, feeding into that press that I showed before, and this thing hammering.
Gotcha.
So after an hour, maybe that steel is used up, and then the operator would put in a new roll of steel on the holder for the thing, and that would go through. So typically during the day, 7/8 of an hour is production time, ideally, and there's some downtime that we have to pay attention to with this thing. So there is going to be some downtime, but the key to it is I can connect to my business system with APIs and grab the job number and grab the part number that we're making and grab all kinds of data on how long it's going to take for them to use up that coil. And I can correlate that with a little web app that keeps track of this. So I could give my manager a dashboard and he can see everything. Like, he sees the thing is down, but it will tell him, you know, if it's more than 10 minutes, he knows then it's been down too long. They haven't had a coil change, or they're supposed to make 50,000 pieces in a day and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they only made 10,000 pieces. He knows that there's a trouble signal. Having said that, if I got someday soon, this will be more sophisticated. If there's a trouble alert on the press, I can send that over MQTT to the broker and the subscriber, and I can get status information. And I could go both ways. I could start the thing up or get status that.
Yeah.
So it's really, my wife couldn't care less about any of this, but to me, it's really exciting because it opens up a lot of possibilities for us. So anyhow, that's our broker. Now, part of this talk is about Go, and I've done some other test equipment projects, and I was really excited about Raspberry Pi. But Raspberry Pi has a lot of overhead associated with it. It's a good thing. Actually, I did a project kind of like this in Go, and my boss's brother, who's a computer hotshot, said, "Oh no, Bill, you got to do it in Python." I hate Python. Python is total hell. And I hope the president of this company knows that, or this university. I'm not sure he does or would agree publicly, but anyhow. The junk with Python is you got to indent everything 4 spaces, and who can read that except for maybe the computer? But Python, I believe, is interpreted, and it's dog slow. This thing, Go, flies. Nothing is faster. And that on an earlier project, I did something with. I notice here we have National Instruments. I love that company. They make great stuff. There's a thing called LabVIEW, I think is the name of it, and it's a beautiful. It's GUI based. It's super fast. A downside of it is it's pricey because it's top of the line equipment, but it's expensive, so it's a tough sell. I did another project with a Visual Basic tool, and here again, Windows and all the overhead of Windows, showing stuff on the screen, keyboard and mouse, all this stuff. It can't touch Arduino. And Arduino is an alternative to PLCs.
Right.
PLCs are, I bought a book on PLCs once. I've never done PLC, but you can't do nearly as sophisticated programming with PLCs as you can with code, with C code, which is what Arduino is. So I don't mind PLCs, but so I was starting to babble before about timekeeping and all this data that comes, and do I get data every second? So I got bogged down for a long time on how am I going to make this work. So I did some work on SQLite, which is a really nice database. It's local, it's fast, but it turns out we don't need it, because with the scheme that I'm selling, that I don't think a lot of people in the industry really know about. The people in this industry are wanting to make money. So
Right.
they're all too happy to charge you every time the press goes up and down. That would be $1. Or the MQTT thing, that's $5,000 a year. It's pricey, and I'm not begrudging them, but our company is never going to spend that in a million years. So a company I like and have used for many years is a company called HostTech. And I am an Adobe Cold Fusion guy. That's one of my favorite technologies. And HostTech, I pay like $7 a month to HostTech for my own little virtual server that does Cold Fusion as middleware, and MySQL database, which is really Maria database in the background. So the price is right. And this,
Cold Fusion, that goes back to Macromedia come up with that?
they did. And I came to it late in the day. You may remember PHP. It's kind of like a PHP thing.
Yeah, I played around with
But
Cold Fusion a little bit, but I thought it was pretty hard.
I can't live without it, and I can show you a little of it later. But anyhow, let's stick with this for a second. So in Arduino, there's programming. It's basically C programming. They call it a sketch. And basically there are two things you're doing. You're doing a setup thing. You're grabbing some drivers in the beginning, and then you're in an infinite loop, which is what that bottom loop thing is there. And so you can get pretty sophisticated with just that. And you see that select board up there. If I could get all of this other crazy stuff to work, that would show Arduino Uno in that select board there. And I think you'll see that maybe in a coming slide of a screenshot. So I'm gonna try to not make this totally boring, but you can see I have some include files there, and that Wi-Fi Nina is something that Arduino includes for free. I didn't write all this driver software. That's like a super big deal. You also see that Arduino is including their MQTT client.h. A nice little cute thing they have is, and our friend in the back row just put in his password and SSID into a separate file. So when I show this slide presentation, I'm not blasting that out there. And I have some stuff here that day count doesn't matter. There's Wi-Fi server. You can see down at the bottom, there's broker testmosquito.org. So this MQTT thing, you can really get bogged down in because there's a lot of technical babble that's out there. But there's a free MQTT broker, which is this one. And for the purpose of this talk, I have just been sending this to the broker, and I'm not overtaxing it with tons of stuff. I'm just sending it, and it's free and it's there. So it's perfect for development. It works on a different port which may be what's being blocked here at TCNJ. There's really no reason
Right.
why anybody would need to send from there. But the other thing that I touched on before is I need to tell it, the broker, a topic. I need to tell it, who am I? If I look at that broker online now, there might be 100 people out there and they identify themselves with a topic. But likewise, I could put there's clients, I'll bring one up in a second, a web client where I can see I subscribe to that, what that broker, what that topic is, I mean, and I can see that on the internet. Ideally, the crowd here would click on that and they'd subscribe to the topic and be able to see it. So down at the bottom there, I have to tell the Arduino what pin this is coming in on and what the proximity status is. Now it happens, I'm kind of using reverse logic. Ideally, this would be a 1 when it's positive and a 0, but it's kind of backwards, and there's no reason to get bogged down in it. It's just what's 1 and what's 0. A quirky thing that happens with this is if the wheel stops right when the magnet is energized,
Yeah.
and sometimes it does as I'm developing it,
Sure.
then the MQTT thing keeps going and then the count stays the same. And that's an example of when I go live with my manager and our factory, I have to address that in code. So like keep track of the time and maybe in the Arduino, I'm just looking for a pulse in there. So no big deal, but it's just a quirk that kind of comes out of this. So here's the setup for this little sketch, this Arduino program. And notice we saw this a second ago, at least I did,
Yeah,
attempting to connect to the network. And this is what's not working with my little T10 mobile hotspot either. I spent hours trying to figure this out. In fact,
It might be something here. I was trying to use remote management software even through my 5G, and I couldn't log into it.
it could be they have metal for aluminum foil in the walls and it's sealed that way. It could be there's no T-Mobile hotspot. But a cool thing with this is they have a manual on it. I have it with me, and all the firewall settings are in there. I got this because the last time I gave a talk here, I had an internet problem, just like today we're having an internet problem. I was hoping this would work, and I decided on this one. In hindsight, I should have gone with the AT&T one. They have something similar. But this was like 30 bucks used on Amazon, and then a SIM card for like 30 days and 5 gig or 10 gig was also like $30. So it was worth the risk, but it didn't wind up paying. But sometimes I need this at work. Or, you know, the market for this is the recreational vehicle thing.
Right.
Anyhow, we can't connect. This code is just, hey, this is what my SSID is. This is my IP address from DHCP. And then when I connect to the broker, it'll say, yes, we're connected to the broker, hooray. In which case that is a web MQTT broker. So here I'm just reading the proximity status of the inductive proximity sensor on the input pin that I defined as 7. And if it's, again, if it's low, it's working. And so I'm sending this canned message, just bundling in the topic and the day count, which is the payload. I'm just saying the begin and the end, send, and I'm changing the proximity status back to 1 from a 0, and I'm waiting 100 milliseconds. So this is a slam dunk. A middle school kid could do this program. So the data that's coming out of this thing, there's a cool thing in Unix and in Go called nanotime. So nanoseconds, which is like a billionth of a second from January 1st, 1970, is what that 1 zillion, 1.6 zillion number is. And then I'm just calling the topic twin. And there's that payload count that I was saying, which was early on in development. So you notice that I'm using this tool, Heidi SQL, is free. I've been using this thing for years. I really like it quite a lot. It's not MySQL, but MariaDB is an offshoot of MySQL. And if you're installing MySQL, I encourage you to not install MariaDB. The engineers at MariaDB used to be at MySQL, but it's a lot to install. Maria is way easier, and so the books you buy will say MySQL on them to get up to speed and so on. And so here's a database I set up on HostTech that I wound up not using, like Bisecond. I don't need Bisecond. So this was a big mental hurdle for me that I only achieved thanks to Mike Redlick and this talk today. Here's the real database. So a thing that's not obvious, well, the day offset in there is the Julian date. The minute offset, again, there are 1,440 minutes in the day. And what the topic is, or what the work center is, what the name of it is. Now, in this case, I have it as a varchar. I have it as a big string, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have another little table next to this. So number 11 is this, and number 12 is the press. And that way I'm just sending two bytes, basically. Maybe it's 1 byte, eight characters. The wheel count is the payload of the MQTT. So I'm just sending who am I? I'm number 11, and this thing will go around 60 times. So 60, 120, and so on. So here's our Go program. Just like Mike is using JetBrains, I'm a big Visual Studio fan, but a thing with Go that makes it complicated for mere mortals is a lot of the same hell that's in the Java world of environment variables and paths, and it's different for Mac and Windows. It's total hell. But for the low price of $8 a month, I bought GoLang, which is what this is, that takes care of a lot of that. A downside with GoLang for me is I hate Git. And I want to have different versions of this program. I want to start with 101 and then copy it all to 102. I can't really do that so easily with Go because I have to import all of these packages, and some of them are kind of vanilla, but you can see the Julian thing is a little bit of a special thing. I have to import, well, of course, database and SQL. FMT is for formatting print line strings. This GitHub has got a MySQL driver that I need. I don't need this SQLite thing in this program anymore. I just didn't take it out. And there's a string conversion and a time thing. And actually, I do need the time thing big time. You'll see why. So another thing where I'm cheating here is, and I was really ambitious to sign up for this talk, is I found some Go program to do pub sub stuff. So I kind of sort of understand most of this. I have a reference to who I got this from. If you just look up Go MQTT, this company begins with an E will pop out, and they have it all available at GitHub or whatever. And so kind of like the Arduino thing, we got a main program in here, and it's also kind of an infinite loop. And we're just telling it parameters of regular vanilla overhead type of stuff. And you could see that I'm subscribing at the bottom and I'm publishing. And those are sub-programs that I'm calling out, functions, methods, basically. So here's my topic. So I'm subscribing, I'm listening to that thing. I didn't call it 11 on the message broker website. I called it HK, which is the name of my company. We're at 35 Industrial Road. And this thing I like to think of as a digital twin. It's not a real press, obviously, but it's digitally effectively the same. And
Is that company MQX?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I'll probably just lift their whole message broker and make that my message broker rather than using the Mosquito Eclipse thing.
Yeah.
Because basically this thing, I don't even know if I need a broker really, because this thing is just listening to whatever. And so that's kind of an open question. But when I am subscribed to the topic, I get a little message saying, hey, we're subscribed. And here's really the meat of the thing. Although this is this is not even 100 lines of code. This is a fairly short, quick, easy program. So I'm just taking a time mark, and that's a nanosecond time mark. And I'm saying this second in Go is just dot second parens. And then I have a for loop with a token in there and time now. And I have a sleep for 1 second. And that time mark, that Unix Nano you can see is from that January 1970 date. And then when this thing runs for real, I will run it and it won't give us everything, but it'll keep track of the minute mark. So as I'm watching it, I can see when my database is going to update out there. And oops. And so I have to look at, like in this if statement, after I'm done doing that, is my prior time mark is the same as this time mark. So I'm telling it what the last second was in this loop. So in the if statement above, if this second is still the same second as I think this second is, then I'm not going to do anything, which is what that not equals, exclamation point, bang equals is a not equals thing in Go. And I keep trying to scroll down in the code, but I'm really in PowerPoint. So then I'm just printing out for the user. Again, when this is tactical, I'll take this printout because this rendering does slow down the program a little bit. And I don't need it for the live program. I just need it for this. So I could just comment it out. And then the logger. So is that readable over there?
Yeah.
Good. I was a little worried about this. So here's the thing where I'm writing. This is kind of the main event where I'm writing to my host tech database in the sky thing. I'm telling it when midnight is, so I know how many minutes have elapsed since midnight. I have to tell it that I'm in New York, and so I have that location thing, LOC, in there. And there's that Julian thing that I imported. And I'm kind of cheating a little bit in here because I only have one work center. I only have 11 as the work center. But what I really need to do is grab this in Go from the table. Or I could even, just put in a JSON file or a plain text file or something like that. And then here's, Go has this thing having to do with deferring close of a database. It's so fast. I'm not really, I did this a few years ago and I don't do Go for my day job, but a thing with Go that's probably good programming practices. You see this insert comma error. what I, as an old school programmer, I just want to issue a command, just insert this into the database. But in Go, there's error handling. So, what if that didn't work? So that's why there's that insert if. It's like a try catch type of thing built in cleanly. And so what I'm writing to my SQL database at Host Tech in the Sky is work center, what year it is. In terms of the year, I don't have to spell out 2023. I can just put in 23 because 100 years from now, I hope to still be here, but this program will probably, I don't need to include that 2.0. I'm trying to be really tight and conservative, or not wasteful, rather, with just putting extra junk into my big data database. So the Julian is a 2 or 3 digit date, the minute, and the payload again is how many times this thing went around in 1 minute. And that's it for the code. The guy who came up with the idea for this parallel processing that like nobody else understands is this professor. I think he's at Cambridge or something. This guy is a really brilliant guy from the point of view. You could see him on YouTube. Yeah. He's talking about he needed to find out about this Russian mathematician. So like over the weekend, he learned Russian. And like, why can't everybody do that? I can't do that, but he can do stuff like that. And so he's really.
What's he talk about on YouTube? What he talks about, well, he wrote a seminal paper. I think you were at the last talk where I asked Mike about types and type safety. So my background is this database called multi-value called PIC. And I'm a big JavaScript fan because PIC is type loose. You don't have to worry about type too much. Now, I've been in meetings and I've seen meetings on YouTube where uptight Oracle and college professor guys are, if you don't have all your varchars and your integers and your floats defined, the world's coming to an end because my Java program isn't going to work. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I was concerned, these guys are idiots because nobody cares about that. Just write the program, get it out there. The system ought to be able to figure out whether 8.0 is 8 or whether the program should crash. What are we talking about? However, I'm eating my words. When we're talking Go, which is all about maximizing memory allocation, the amount of memory the thing is defined for and consuming is everything. So I still couldn't care less about stupid programmers who, the beginning programmer messes up the int versus the float. The Java should be able to take care of that. But in Go, when we're trying to run lightning fast, everything, if we define it cleanly, is gold and solves any number of problems and makes any number of things go away. So Go is a strongly typed language, and that's important. This guy, there were 3 guys who did Go, basically. This guy is my favorite because he's the parallel processing piece of it. The other guy, Ken Thompson, is another super genius. The other guy, Robert, I can't remember his last name, is a Pascal guy. I used to do Pascal a long time ago. That's where I kind of got into this. And Pascal weighs heavily in Go. But a thing I like about Rob Pike is he's a C++ basher. The thing with Go is it's lightweight. It's for a certain purpose. The problem with C++ is it keeps expanding. They keep adding more crap on, and it's an impossible nightmare of garbage. And Go solves that problem with packages. and importing packages and keeping the thing lean and mean. And so, you know, this notion of, I sent Mike Redlick an article 2 years ago. The guy who invented Java, James Gosling, isn't doing Java anymore. James Gosling is doing Go. But Mike is a traditional guy, so that's his thing. So thank you for being here and being a listener. I don't know if we have anybody on the Zoom call who I've offended, but I have a card I can give you. And as maybe you know, I love the sound of my own voice. So I'm in Morristown and my office is in Lodi. If you need me to